This is the first Zestology Book Club. I'm Tony Wrighton. Thanks for listening. I've been doing this podcast about 5 years, but I've never done a book club podcast before. But in these tough times, during the coronavirus lockdown, I was kind of asking my listeners if they would fancy reading a book for a bit of escapism. And I know we all need a bit of escapism at the moment. Here I am, sat in the spare room recording this podcast. I can hear the baby screaming downstairs, and he's fine, but he's been stuck in for the whole day on a day of rubbish weather like the rest of us, and it's just not that easy sometimes, is it? So if we do get half an hour spare in a day to read something a little bit escapist and fiction, I thought that'd be quite a nice idea. So it's a bit of an experiment, really. Don't know what I'm doing with a book club. First time I've ever been a member of a book club. But the first Zestology Book Club is about the book called The Humans by Matt Haig. If you've read it, you'll love this podcast. If you haven't read it, either feel free to read it and come back, or listen anyway, because we widen out into more general book chat as we go. And it's just for people who like reading, chatting about books, and in particular Matt Haig. So I've got some special guests. We recorded it on Zoom as well, and I hope you enjoy it. Here is the first Zestology Book Club. Right, we're recording now. This is the first ever Zestology Book Club podcast. None of us have any idea what we're doing. None of us have taken part in a book club before, apart from Josey, and all she did was drink wine with her friends. So that doesn't really help, but we'll see how we go. Before we start, let me introduce everybody. Josey Rew, nice to see you, Josey.
Hi.
Josey runs the Instagram account Joytastic, which is all about educating and empowering young people and children. And I know, Josey, you're particularly enjoying lockdown schooling at home at the moment.
Oh my goodness, it is a real experience. That is all I can say. I mean, I'm a teacher and I can't teach my kids. I'm questioning being a teacher ever again after this, to be honest.
Where are they right now?
Well, I can hear one, so one's asleep. I can hear one shouting and the other one's quiet, but the other one's just had a epic half an hour meltdown because I asked him to stop playing with some Duplo.
I do hope we're kind of at some point going to get an appearance from one of them, BBC News interview style.
No. Yeah, I guaranteed.
Excellent. Okay, well, Josey, we'll look forward to hearing your thoughts about the book in just a second. Dr. Stephen Simpson, high-performance expert, old friend of mine, and definitely a friend of the podcast as well. Recently a granddad too, although, Steve, I believe you're not going to be called granddad, are you?
No, I just today I came up with a better title to my daughter, and I said, if you're going to call me anything, call me a super parent.
Super parent. Okay, yeah, that'll be really easy for a 1-year-old to get their chops around when.
No, I've got a name for him. He calls me Stig.
Stig. Okay, yeah, that'd be good. Yeah, I like that. Yeah. And Richard Brake, breathwork expert, and Richard was supposed to be in Peru. Am I right in saying Peru at the moment?
Yeah, I was supposed to be doing an ayahuasquero initiation in Peru, a deep 1 or 2 month dive into ayahuasca shamanism. But yes, things have changed. But yeah, back in Hammersmith, and it could be in Peru with the wallpaper. But yeah, it's not quite as warm, but the weather's been good enough.
How? I mean, why go to Peru when you could be in Hammersmith? That's all I say. Reading books for the Zestology Book Club. But I mean, are you hoping to go? I mean, it's so difficult to know when you'll be able to do things in the future, but presumably you're hoping to go at some point later this year.
Yeah, I just saw an announcement from one ayahuasca center in Peru where they said it doesn't matter about lockdown in other countries. We are not doing any retreats until October because the infrastructure here just cannot cope with a potential outbreak. And a lot of the families related, the local Shipibo tribes, they can't cope with coronavirus. They don't have the hospitals and things like that. So they're just saying, we're not going to take any risks. So we're waiting a long, long time.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Hammersmith it is, I suppose. Look, guys, anyway, thank you so much for agreeing to be part of the book club. I know it's a bit of a commitment to read a book. To prepare for this first ever book club podcast, I've been reading an online blog called How to Do a Book Club That Doesn't Suck. And I've been trying to take their advice, but there's a few different kind of suggestions they've come up with. It says, define the purpose of your book club. Well, I think we agreed that because lockdown, it's actually quite intense at the moment. It's nice to have, a bit of escapism. So the first book we picked was a bit of fiction. And then it said, create a process to nominate books to read. Apparently, it's very important not to be a book club dictator. So I have to kind of share that process out to other people. And then give your book club discussions some structure. So it's come up with some suggested questions. And the first suggested questions is, what did you like best about this book? So the book was The Humans by Matt Haig. And the idea was that it was kind of a nice bit of escapist fiction, very inspiring as well, and had lots of good reviews on Amazon, which I thought was a good sign. Josey, I'll come to you first. What did you like about the book? And did you like it?
I loved it. I wasn't really sure what to expect from it, but the second I actually listened to it on audio, it's just easier when children. I could just block them out and listen.
Yeah.
But the second I started listening, I just loved the humour in it. It started off quite sort of there were loads of sort of the whole thing with him in the garage trying to eat the food. I thought that was quite funny, and being in the sort of psychiatric ward I found quite funny. But then as it moved on, I really enjoyed the themes in it, and the idea of friendship and relationships that were formed with his wife and his dog and his son, the message, I just thought it was so interesting coming from an alien's view who didn't know anything about Earth, and how he observed us humans, and just I thought it was quite appropriate for lockdown, because it was really all about appreciation, wasn't it? And appreciating the simple things, and just those really, just the sort of, like I said about the relationships, but the whole poetry theme and music, and just that one glass of wine that he had. So I thought that it was and towards the end there was quite a poignant message, I thought, as well, really.
Yeah, the culture is kind of really strong throughout the book, his appreciation of kind of music and art and all the things that can never be perfect, but make humans kind of perfect in a different way from the supposed perfection of the aliens. And he also talks a lot about love. Steve, did you listen to it on audiobook, or did you read the book? How did you read The Humans?
I read it.
Yeah. And what did you think? What did you like about it?
What either like the best thing or just in general?
The best thing, or whatever you want, really.
Okay. Well, I'm probably a little bit different to other people in the way I read a book, and I make a decision pretty much after 2 pages as to whether I'm going to read any more. And I know that's a big mistake, because there are times when I force myself to carry on and I've ended up really liking a book. So I lose the possibility of some good books, but I save myself a real load of time by not bothering to read stuff that I just don't like. I'm not saying there wasn't a good book. So anyway, he passed the test, and I'm sure he'll sleep soundly knowing that, and the thing that I liked was I'm not interested at this point in the plot or the characters or anything like that. I just look at the way somebody writes. I look at the words they use, and he has a really simple, effective way of writing. And my views about language. Language is incredibly ambiguous, and that's why we have difficulty understanding each other, and why we have wars and stuff like that. I thought his language, at least to me, was superb. And he got me hooked already. And I thought, well, if somebody can write in such an easy, simple, engaging way, then pretty much whatever comes next is going to be good. And of course, I was not disappointed. I thought it was a brilliant book. Not the kind of book, Tony, that I'd have ever read on my own. I mean, when you told me about it and you said, oh, it's a book about an alien, you know, my heart sank. I mean, I go into the local supermarket and I'm surrounded by aliens already. So why do I want to, read about another one that's come out from outer space or something? But no, wonderful. A wonderful art. As Josey said, the characters were so real, and I think I also agree with Josey. I thought this is a great book for lockdown, because I think all of us, whether we've liked it or not, we've all had to go inside ourselves a little bit. It's been quite a reflective experience, and here's this alien that comes down, and he's looking at us as a species through those eyes. Like, what is going on with these people? Why are they like this? I mean, don't they see there's better ways to live and all this kind of stuff? And I think any of us who go into meditation or reflection of stuff, the first thing we notice is, why are we making our lives so complicated? And anyway. And then when he goes on to quantum physics and mathematics, I'm no good at mathematics, by the way, but I'm fascinated by quantum theory and those kind of things and parallel dimensions. They make a lot of sense to me, and that shows that I'm probably an alien as well.
It's nice, isn't it, that I suppose this is the good thing about the book club, because I hadn't really thought about how relevant it is during lockdown, but actually you're right, and it is a very reflective time, isn't it? Because we're forced to strip back. We're not allowed any of the normal luxuries. Even going out to Pizza Express for a half-price pizza seems like an unimaginable luxury at the moment. So yeah, it does make you reflect on what it's like to be human, and I'm seeing that now. What about you, Rich? What did you think of it? Did you enjoy it as much as the others?
Yeah, I did. I don't normally read fiction, but I think this was a really good push out of my comfort zone for me to have some more fun. I think I'm quite guilty of maybe being a bit of a workaholic at times, and this was actually a step for me into having some fun and just enjoying myself a bit more. And what I really liked about it was just this different perspective, just seeing how weird we seem, how weird English society seems to an alien. And I'm live quite on the edges of society as it is, biohacking, doing weird diets, going off to ayahuasca and doing breathwork and things like that. And sometimes I feel a little bit, I guess, embarrassed, ashamed, different, like an outsider. And when I see this alien coming in and looking at English society and just being like, wow, they're so weird, I feel less guilty about being weird. So it was quite like at least everyone's weird. It's not just me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the second question that it was recommended that it is a good question to ask at a book club is, what did you least like about the book? And I'm going to start this one because I think the very things that make it a really good book, and I don't know if you guys agree about this, but it's his language and the way that he uses such short sentences and draws you in so easily to a very engaging story is both the best thing and possibly the thing that does the book down a little bit. I did find sometimes the message was slightly clunkily introduced. And I picked out one passage to illustrate it, which is the bit where our hero, the alien, gets beaten up. And he says, I woke in the ambulance and there was only her face above me, like a sun that eyes could stand. And she stroked my hand as she'd once stroked my hand the first time I'd met her. I love you, she said. And I knew the point of love right then. The point of love was to help you survive. The point was also to forget meaning, to stop looking and to start living. And it just feels like, it felt like a slightly obvious kind of segue from story to message. The other time I thought that was, there was a list of about 100 things towards the end of the book, weren't they? Kind of, it was advice to his son that he left on his computer. And I found that list firstly, some of the bits on the list I loved, and I highlighted them because I thought, oh yeah, that's actually really good advice. But it was a very long list, and again, it felt like it was the author's kind of, blog, basically. It could have been a blog rather than part of the end of the book. That's perhaps what I found almost a little bit simplistic in the way that he delivered his message. But, that's not to say that I didn't really enjoy the book, because I did, probably as much as you guys. Rich, were the bits that you didn't like so much?
Yeah, I think the kind of the ending, the whole message thing was a little bit predictable. It was like, oh, here's an alien with these superpowers, but humans are better because we have the capacity to love. I was like, oh, I don't know if that's really good enough. And it feels a bit cliched to have that, like, yeah, we're stupid and we argue and we have wars, but we have love and that's going to save us all. And yeah, I guess
that's pretty much what you guys say when you go and do your ayahuasca ceremonies in Peru anyway, isn't it? Hey guys, we've got love and that's all we need.
Yeah, that's what the Beatles say. And I'm wearing my John Lennon glasses, so I should be echoing that. But I thought it was a little bit like, I saw it coming from a long way and I was like, I really hope they don't just go, oh, but humans can love. And they kind of did in the end.
Steve, what were the parts, or were there any parts of the book that you didn't like as much, bearing in mind you obviously really admired his writing style and his linguistic talent?
Well, I did, definitely. And in fact, your comments have prompted me because without, kind of you setting it up like that, I'd probably struggle to think what I didn't like. But just to defend him, not that he needs my defense, the bit in the ambulance, I mean, particularly the way you just read it, I don't know if you could hear yourself or when you listen to it again, there's a wonderful cadence to to the words. It's like Shakespeare, the structure that he used to write by. So I thought, okay, that's perhaps a bit flowery, but I think he was using that, maybe unconsciously, to get across a message. I don't know. But anyway, more importantly, the list of 100, I mean, I do remember reading that and thinking that it was towards the end of the book, wasn't it? Yeah. And I thought, well, this is flat, If anybody says, here's 100 things, Steve, that would give you a better life, I wouldn't bother. I might read the first 3 and then I'd throw it away, because the older you get, you realize that there's less and less that's important. And certainly when I coach people, I'd probably only ever talk about 3 things, and I could be coaching them for 5 years. So I don't know what the other 97 are for, quite frankly.
Yeah, it was too many. It's like, I don't know if any of you have done a lockdown quiz on Zoom, but they're very trendy at the moment, aren't they? And I have done 2, and I've learned the most important thing is have as few questions as possible, because too many questions, it just goes on for ages. And maybe that list of points could have been a bit shorter.
Iambic pentameter, that was the name of how Shakespeare wrote. GCSE English, yes.
I'm impressed.
I like to think that's about the level of the Zestology Book Club, GCSE English.
Yeah.
Yeah. Josey, you were kind of nodding your head at the quiz. You've been doing online Zoom quizzes, have you?
Well, I've done one, and one I'm just not very good at it. And it did go on for quite a long time. It was our whole Sunday evening, really.
Yeah, I think you need 5 questions per person.
Yeah.
It needs to snap along very quick. So what did you think about that list at the end, and any other thoughts of the things that you perhaps weren't quite as convinced by?
Well, I was kind of laughing to myself when you were saying that, because I thought, I'm so different. I must be just a really emotional person. I started crying. I don't know what was happening to me when he was doing it. I thought maybe it's my gender. I don't know, but I was just there. I was looking at it, thinking how sad it was for Gulliver that his own dad was just, he hadn't had a very good connection with him, and then this alien come along, and as he was giving the advice, I just thought, I was also thinking of myself as a parent and thinking what lovely advice to pass on to your children. But I think I felt quite opposite to you on that, but it kind of really got me, that bit.
I think that's very relevant. And I have to say, despite everything I said about that list, I know that because I kind of highlight, I tend to read books on my phone, actually. I use the Kindle highlighting tool, which is very handy. It's really good. And I know that I highlighted 8 or 9 of those points because they were so good. So I did think they were good points. And it's nice to hear that different point of view, especially because so much of what you do is teaching, and then the Instagram account about parenthood as well.
Yeah. I suppose recently I almost see things from a different angle. I read a book recently that I read as a teenager, and I read it again recently, and I saw it so differently because I'm seeing it through different eyes now.
I've found, since being a parent, my tolerance for books that involve kind of potential murder or harm, especially of children, I just can't do it. And I used to be able to read anything, and I just can't now. It's so difficult.
Yeah, I remember in the early days, I couldn't even watch nature documentaries when the elephants were getting lost or something. I couldn't. But I mean, I can now. But
okay, but the Humans by Matt Haig passed the test, and it was readable, was it?
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
One of the other questions that is a suggested book club question: does this book remind you of anything else? I just wonder. I mean, it might not, but did it occur to any of you that this book is like another book? If people are listening to this and they haven't necessarily, Rich, you just said yes.
I got a very strong feeling that this is very much like The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. Mark Haddon wanted to get in here first because I didn't want anyone else to take the answer. It's so similar.
I wanted to say that.
Yeah, see, that's why I shouted out first.
Yeah, well done. Yeah. No, I think so. The ones of us that have read that book obviously did think that, and it's similar not just in the storyline, but it's in the way it's presented and in the language as well, isn't it? It's such an accessible, easy read and very empathetic.
Yeah, it has that same kind of like humor at how silly things are, and you see things kind of in a very binary perspective, whether it's read by someone with autism or whether it's read by an alien from another planet. It gives you that, wow, things are really strange when you look at things like that.
Then what about, I mean, in terms of a general thought about the book, would you recommend it to other people? Steve, would you, I mean, you said you don't read that often, or fiction, you don't read that often. Would you recommend this to other people?
Yeah, and in fact, I as a result of lockdown, I've been running a webinar every week, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Actually, it's something I've been thinking of doing for years, but now I've got time. And on the last show, I did just that. I recommended it. I think we were don't quite know how it came up, but anyway, yeah, I would recommend it. And can I say something else, which is absolutely terrible? But I mean, it's like the truth, because you were asking, like, what book is it like? Well, I had goosebumps sometimes because there would be a whole paragraph that was like almost word for word from the last book that I wrote that you've read, because I talk about the reptile brain and language and stuff like that and living in the present. And I'm certain that it's not plagiarism. That's not the point that I'm making. But if you're reading something, you start to resonate on that same frequency, and I mean, if all of the universe, all of life is a frequency, and we will all resonate with different stuff. But I think, one of the reasons why I thought it was such a brilliant book is because it was almost, definitely preaching to the converted. It was, yeah.
That's great. If you had to give it a rating, I'm always quite interested in star ratings with books, and I definitely always check the ratings that books have on Amazon before I buy a book. And I also love the sample feature, and almost always test out the sample. I tested the sample for this book before recommending it for the book club. What would you give it out of 5, Steve?
Well, it's got to be a 5, hasn't it?
5. Okay.
What I've said. Yeah.
High praise indeed. Josey?
I'm with you, Steve. 5 for me.
Rich?
I'm going to go 4.
I would go 4 as well, but kind of at 4.2, if which I'm probably not allowed, but there you go. I mean, the idea of setting this book club up was that, you know, in these lockdown times, things are quite stressful and can get quite dominated by watching the news bulletins and being very plugged in and connected to other people and checking WhatsApp and Instagram and social media and everything else. So to be able to disconnect by reading books is a lovely way to relax. And I really hope that people have firstly found the time to do that with this book. It doesn't take very long to read. And secondly, you know, enjoy the podcast. What are there any other books that you guys would recommend that aren't necessarily similar? It doesn't even have to really be fiction, but I mean, obviously I'm going to carry on doing this book club, but is there anything else that you would recommend? Josey, I know that did you recommend the book Where the Crawdads Sing to me?
Oh, no, the one that I said to you was this one, which is The Choice.
Okay.
Yeah, by Jacob Tritt. I've only just started it, so it's hard for me to say, but I've heard so many amazing things about how life-changing it is.
Is it fiction or non-fiction?
It's fiction.
Okay. And can you give us the from what you've read, I know you've not read very much, but can you give us the kind of 1 or 2 sentence lowdown on what it's all about without reading the cover? I'm really joking.
Well, I think again it's about this guy who has everything. He's in the prime of his life, and he's depressed, and he can't figure out why he's depressed, and it's about the journey that he goes on to sort. I think yes, a bit of sort of enlightenment.
Good. Okay. Yeah. Well, I know when you sent me that recommendation, I looked it up and it looked brilliant. So that's a good one. Steve, what about you then? What would be another book that you might recommend?
Well, a book, it's been around a long time now. I mean, I must have been about 16 or 17 when I read it the first time, and I still go back to it. And it's been on the TV recently, and that's Catch-22. Because there are some similarities with The Humans, because it's a very funny book, and yet it's also a very tragic book. So there's a lot of, you know, the dark side. And for want of a better suggestion at the moment, I mean, there's loads of others that I could have mentioned, but yeah, that's my one.
Well, that's a good one. And Steve, I know you and I have talked about Catch-22 before, because I think you might have recommended it before, and I read it. And
Probably.
We need to do this for a book club, because I never finished it. Because it's one of those books that I just got a little bit stuck about halfway through. I could appreciate the linguistic perfection in the book and also the kind of message behind it. But I don't know why, I just kind of got a little bit bogged down in the middle of the book. So maybe I need to do it again and try again.
Well, Tony, it's a long book, but by today's standards, it's a very long book indeed. So that could be the reason. I mean, our attention span, all of us now, is much shorter.
No, not mine.
And probably if I read Catch-22 now, I'd say the same, which another reason why I like The Humans, because it was short.
Yeah. I mean, if you start a long book and you love it, yeah, brilliant. I remember reading Shantaram and reading the first 50 pages and thinking, fantastic, I've got another 900 pages to go. Don't know if you guys have read Shantaram. Rich, you were nodding your head there.
I got to about page 400 and then had to put it down.
Did you? You didn't finish it?
No, I felt it got a bit repetitive.
Yeah. Isn't it funny, though, that's just the incredible thing about books, and it's so hard to recommend things sometimes because what one person likes, another one doesn't. Rich, what would you recommend then? Obviously not Shantaram, but what would you be pulling out in the middle of Peru after an ayahuasca ceremony, not having spoken to any human beings for 2 weeks in the jungle? What would you be recommending?
I'm going to recommend an old one, Richard Buck, Illusions. I think it's called Illusions, and I think it's Tales of a Reluctant Messiah. So it's fiction, but it's got such a good message. It's basically about this guy who's the Messiah, but he doesn't really want to be the Messiah. It's not Monty Python, but it's more like he's just in America and he's basically just flies planes for fun, and he can walk on water and things. And this guy who is basically meets him and learns all these life lessons from this reluctant Messiah. So it's got that kind of spiritual, mystical twist, as well as some really nice messages in there as well. And it's not too long either.
That sounds great. I must say, I really enjoyed talking about the book and books with you guys. Most people will listen to this in audio form, but I have to say that a couple of us have got, and I'm not including me in this, much better Zoom backgrounds than the other two. Josey and Rich, lovely print wallpaper, looking fantastic. Steve's, we've just got a microwave in the background. I mean, it's very disappointing, Steve.
Yeah, I know. Well, I didn't think we were going to be filmed. That's my only excuse.
Yeah.
I could have.
Don't worry, I've got an old bench cushion in the background and a pile of clothes and a baby seat just out of shot.
Yeah,
Don't know if you can see that. There you go.
You guys need to up the game for the next one.
Yeah, I really need to think about this.
I read an article about, basically they did an analysis of the parliamentary Zoom meeting, and they're like, this guy's got his thing too low, you can see his nostrils, this person's too dark, there's light. So I've taken notes from Boris Johnson and the rest.
I need to move back then.
We actually have a load of guidelines from Sky. I haven't been broadcasting with Sky from home yet, but there's a load of guidelines. I haven't followed any of them. But the main ones are, have the light behind the computer, not in front, which I haven't really done here, but the light, so behind the screen, AirPods if you can, because that makes the sound better. And also, old TV trick, the older you get, the higher the camera is, the more flattering. And supposedly these old kind of TV stars of the 70s and 80s, they would insist on the camera being as high as possible because it was so flattering for them. So because it's not very flattering if I'm like that. Guys, thank you very much. Josey, where can people find out more about everything you're doing with Joytastic?
Well, Joytastic on Instagram and Facebook. At the moment, that's it. We're just starting the whole YouTube website venture, but the ball's rolling.
I'm really enjoying it, and obviously relatively new parent myself, and I get a lot of inspiration from your posts, so thanks for that.
Thanks,
yeah, no, they're really good. Yeah. Rich, what about you? Where can everyone find out? Obviously you're a former guest twice to the podcast, but where can people find out more about what you do?
So I'm at thebreathgeek.com, and I'm on Instagram at _breath_geek. And yeah, I'm doing a lot of online breath sessions, online breath workshops. I think you said you might come along to one. So
I'd love to. Yeah.
Still doing a lot via lockdown, and the breathwork online seem to work pretty well.
Yeah, I can't wait to do your next session. I think it's next week or the week after or something like that.
Yeah, next Thursday, 7th of May, 5 p.m.
Okay, brilliant. Well, this will probably be out before then, but thanks, Rich. And Steve, where can people find out more about, obviously you've been on the podcast loads of times before, but where can people find out about what you do?
Website, drstevensimpson.com, and YouTube. I put at least one video a week on YouTube, and that's just Stephen Simpson. That's my channel. I think I've got about 250 or something out there.
Good stuff. Hope we can see each other soon. It'd be nice to hang out, see all of you soon. Thanks for taking part in this first book club. I've no idea if we've done the right thing or not, but
thanks for having us.
Yeah, I mean, book clubs, normally people chat about the book for a bit and then it moves on to other subjects, which I think is really what we've done, but there you go. Rich, I can't believe you didn't like Shantaram. That is just an absolute classic.
I liked it, but I had to move on.
Yeah, fair enough. I had to move on with Catch-22. Guys, thanks very much indeed. Really appreciate it. We'll do another book club soon. Before we finish this podcast, I thought it would be great to hear from a Zestology listener on what they thought of the book. So here is Verity Lamb, who is one of the members of the Zestology Book Club Facebook group, which we've set up, on Matt Haig's The Humans. Here's Verity.
Hello, I'm Verity. I am fortunate enough actually to be outside, which is really quite fantastic in the current times that we're in. I have a trail near to my house and they haven't been closed, so I'm able to go out for a nice wander, which is lovely. Quick review about the Matt Haig book that we have just had in our first Zestology Book Club. Super good. Liked it. Love the fact that it wasn't one of your typical 7 stories. I think it's something like 7 storylines, the general tropes that they will go down. I tend to read a lot of crime, horror, thriller, bit of romance, bit of chick lit, stuff like that. So actually it was really nice to read something a little bit different. I really liked how we kind of came to love the humans and to see some of our better sort of traits and attributes. Made me view a few things a bit differently, which was quite nice. Loved the list towards the end of the book as well. But I think, you know, you've got love and faith, then you can pretty much get through most things, eh? And I quite like that, if you're lucky enough to have those things. Anyway, look forward to discussing the book with you all. Stay safe, be kind, be good. See ya.
Verity, thank you very much indeed. And thank you also to Josey Rew and Dr. Stephen Simpson and Richard Blake. I kind of think this worked. I enjoyed reading this book, and I enjoyed getting the thoughts of other people on this book as well. It was nice to talk books and to escape from the harsh realities of everyday life as they are at the moment. Challenging, maybe, rather than harsh. I'll pick another book soon. If you've got any suggestions, as I said in this podcast, I don't want to be a book club dictator, so do let me know through tonywrighton.com, and thanks for listening.